Welcome back to F1 Report, everyone. Well, that's the first race in the bag, and what a race it was. It certainly was worth the wait. Let's take a look back across the weekend and discuss some of the highlights and lowlights for the teams. These are going to be really quick notes, so if you want a more in-depth breakdown, let me know, and I could do something a bit more long form for you. Practice was our first opportunity to see the cars really back in action after a long delay since the winter testing. Some teams also had a chance to apply upgrades that they'd made. This was our first time to see how those worked out as well. Overall, Mercedes dominated all three practice sessions. They're looking in a league of their own throughout. Red Bull marked themselves out as frontrunner challenge to Mercedes, but the Racing Point had made incredible progress up the field, as their winter testing had suggested. It looks like they're going to be a constant threat along with McLaren for best of the rest. Surprisingly, or maybe not if you'd watched my last video, Ferrari looked poor. So poor in fact, many had wrote them off in the race already. Towards the back of the field, Williams looked to have made improvement, closing in on Alfa Romeo, with Haas also joining them at the bottom end of the field. Valtteri Bottas was the big winner coming out of qualifying, going so fast in his first run in Q3 that he felt like he could go trim the daisies on his second run. Unfortunately for some, the yellow flags he caused with that off, although brief, did have a detrimental effect. Hamilton, who finished second, was called into the stewards on two counts, one for failing to slow behind yellow flags, and the second for going beyond track limits. Now, he had his time deleted for track limits, and initially he was handed no punishment for the failing to slow, as his vision was obscured. However, on the morning of the race, a new camera angle was seen by Red Bull, who reopened the complaint. The stewards claimed that they'd also not seen that camera angle before, and Hamilton was handed a 3-place grid penalty. Now, whoever was on the F1 Twitter account that posted that video, boy, has some explaining to do. The Mercedes continue to look like they're in a class of their own throughout qualifying. However, the Red Bull did set up a strategic play for Verstappen, who would qualify in third and start on the medium tyres in second, the only person to do so in the top 10 on that strategy. They clearly felt that the only way they could fight Mercedes was in strategy. The first qualifying session of the season also gave us a good look at the midfield battle. The Racing Point, as predicted, are looking extremely quick. However, they were beaten by the McLaren of Lando Norris, who also managed to split the Red Bulls with a fantastic drive to qualify fourth. Overall, the top 10, except for Mercedes, were incredibly close, and it bodes well for an exciting season ahead. The big surprise, again coming out of qualifying, was Ferrari, with Vettel not even making it into Q3, and Leclerc qualifying in 7th. A poor result for them. Renault and AlphaTauri appear to be fighting to try and get into Q3 at the tail end of that field, with Romain Grosjean doing a really good job of getting his car into Q2. As was the case in practice, the big winner was Williams again, with Russell jumping ahead of both Alfa Romeos in Q1. The race itself was mind-boggling. There was constant action, either with overtakes or someone retiring. Only 11 drivers finished. We know that Austria can be hard track on the cars, so combining that with the normal first race in the season reliability problems causes a mind-blowing rate of cars retiring. Over the course of the race, we lost Verstappen, Ricciardo, Stroll, Magnussen, Grosjean, Russell, Raikkonen, Albon and Kvyat. With so many retirements, you can imagine how much of an important role the safety cars played. Unfortunately, with the cars retiring so much, it robbed us of a lot of battles. The most interesting was Max Verstappen on his medium tyres, running well in second before he had engine electrical issues. Even both Mercedes were threatened with gearbox issues that meant they had to stay off the curbs as the vibration were damaging the gearboxes. When this was initially discovered, the Mercedes were in their own world, 10 seconds ahead of anyone else. it was only after a safety car that Albon strapped on new tyres and started to attack that things started to look dicey for Mercedes. But sadly, much like Brazil in 2019, Albon went for a move on Hamilton, got ahead of him, but then was spun by Hamilton. Hamilton got a 5-second penalty for that, and Albon once again lost his chance for a podium. He would later go on to retire after that. It was this 5-second penalty for Hamilton and the fact that Albon was no longer occupying third that created a wild sprint to the finish, with Perez, Norris and Leclerc all desperate to try and close that gap, score some big points and a podium for their team. Ultimately, Bottas went on to have a controlled win. Very well deserved from him. He didn't put a foot wrong, even when under heavy pressure from Hamilton. Hamilton himself crossed the line in second, but both Leclerc, who had an amazing finish, and Norris, who had been very fast throughout, were within the 5 seconds, bumping Hamilton down to 4th place. Norris also claimed the fastest lap, as he was still outside the 5-second window entering the final lap, and managed to drag himself up with a mighty lap at the end. Perez was another standout, and it looked like for a long time that he was a favourite to get a podium. However, a decision not to pit him under the safety car looked to have caught up with him by the end of the race, as he ended up in 6th. Down the field, it was more about who survived than how quickly they went. Ocon picking up points in 8th on his return will be good for him. Giovinazzi will be happy with his 9th as well. Vettel rounded off the points in 10th place after getting spun round, making a risky move early in the race and dropping down to the back. The one man not to score points in the race, however, was Nicholas Latifi on his debut. Oh, how he would have loved to have scored a point or two on his Williams debut. Out of the guys who retired, I think the Red Bulls were both in a position to make something special happen. So it was a real shame to see them both retire. Russell was another man out of the retirees that could have gone on to have a bit of magic. In the race, he was often ahead of the Alpha of Giovinazzi, who ended up in 9th. So perhaps Williams will be wondering what if there. Overall, I think that what we learned from this first race is that Mercedes really have no equal unless they bring the pain down on themselves. And the Racing Point pace is very real. McLaren are much faster than expected, and Charles Leclerc, much like Alonso before him, can drag that Ferrari to places it should not be. Bring on next week, I say. We'll be staying at Austria, but hopefully more teams will have better luck with reliability, so we'll see how they go. Do you think we'll get a similar result? Let me know in the comments, and I'll catch you in the next one.